Hey, how's everybody doing? This is OG Hakeem coming to you. I hope everybody's doing well considering what's going on. We're all trying to stay safe and healthy. Some of us more healthier than safe. But, I thought that considering, the time that we have, more people are staying home. Some are even lucky enough to be able to work from home. Millions of people, well, we know how that's going, right? Um, I thought that'd be a perfect time to talk about having a backup plan. I think everybody, and this is my personal opinion, so don't let anybody take offense to it, but I think everybody should have a business license in America, since it's a capitalistic society. Anyone can open a business if they have the will, determination, and considering the new, and I don't know how to put this, but there's a open source, and open source means that it's available to anyone at pretty much no charge. So when I say open source, it relates to being able to use these technologies to create a business. And sometimes, if you have the right creative capital, the right ideals, and that's what it's about, really. Ideal is capital today in 2020. If you have a good ideal, you can put it together, right? Using, like I'm saying, these attributes, which is open source, which is a repository of pre-code. We'll go into that more. I'm just trying to lay out the basics right now because this, like I've said before, this is going to be, for me personally, a project year. Putting together a number of projects. Some will be for, you know, um, educational. Some will be for business. The learning process is always going to be educational. And if you're doing something in that frame, you should always make sure that you're, putting a little, business behind it. Uh, Open source, Linux is another. Um, Linux is an operating system. Open source, which anybody can download, use. Unlike Windows, which is an operating system, but it's proprietary. Not as proprietary as it used to be. Microsoft opened their some of the code to developers, and we'll talk about how you can become a developer. Sometimes, not being able to go to school shouldn't be the obstacle that holds you back from doing the things that you want to do in life. That's real. And when I say that open source is a framework. Linux is open source, which is an operating system anybody can download, and I'll get to the importance of that. And open source is where you got coders from all over the world who contribute to developing code for business and number of users. Could be for healthcare, education. Linux is an operating system. It's open source. That is an amazing operating system that is updated by coders all over the world, sometimes on a daily basis. It's vulnerable, but because of so many coders and so many eyes on it, the vulnerabilities are taken care of. And I'm not gonna say matter of days. Sometimes it might take longer, but they're on top of it. So that doesn't seem to be a problem with the operating system itself. It doesn't seem to be open to vulnerabilities like some others. And I don't want to downplay anybody else's operating system. I'm just upplaying Linux as an operating system for people to use and download. Another thing is how we can build businesses using these two technologies, open source, which will allow us to create, say, like applications that you can design using pre-code. All you have to do is have an idea. How do you want the design to look? How do you want the app to look? What do you want it to do? And so I want to say, hey man, I'm looking for ideals. No lie, like I have good ideals, but more ideals is better. In certain cases, more is always better. So I'm looking to work with people like you so that we can develop and create these dynamic applications, not just application software. You're looking at being able to develop software that will run virtual reality environments. That's a whole nother area that is going to start to take off. It has taken off, but it hasn't gained the traction yet. Most people understand it or are aware of it, but they, don't see it in the sense that there are business opportunities based around it. Developing virtual reality environments for video conferencing, for operating rooms where you can have a doctor in California, but he can man an operating room in New York through a virtual environment and utilizing, different communication technologies that we have available. We also have robotics, and they're going to need programmers, not programmers, developers to help design the programs that will run the robotics. We have automation. So as we move forward and say over the next couple of years, it's going to take a minute for the economy to recover from this latest hit. We were still recovering from 2008, the housing market crash. And if you were in the process of getting a home or you were caught up in it, you understand that people are still recovering. That was 12 years ago, man. And the economy, we lost what? Close to $2 trillion. That was the announced amount. So it could have been more, at the end of the day, because really no one knew within those first couple of years after the what they call the housing crisis with the subprime loans, how much damage had it really been done. And I can tell you, I can drive around my city and see with the housing and the foreclosures, man, that was bad. I mean, certain cities got hit hard. Detroit really got hit hard. It had been going through its own situation, and then the housing crisis. Like, man, that was a hard one to take, and the people of Detroit really suffered. But you got to give Detroit credit because they're coming back big time, man. And that's another point I want to make. I don't want to make this a doom and gloom, because I look at the glass as half full, not half empty. So I'm looking at, well, things aren't the way we want them to be, but we do have a lot to work with, and we're strong, and we've been through this before. And I think you strong, and I know you strong. I'm strong. I'm willing to work through this, to sit down with anybody. Contact me through the email, call me on the phone. We'll sit down, we'll talk. I was talking to one of my business partners today about some of how we're going to move forward. What are some of the concepts and ideals, and what are we going to work on as one of our first projects this year? So, of course, we're integrating all of the technologies that I said. We're going to use open source environment. We're going to use Linux as our operating system. We're going to use a number of software that will cost you hundreds of dollars. You can pretty much get it, and like I said, it isn't free. Of course, since it's open source and it's mostly donations, of course you should donate, because what you do is you contribute to the development, and if you're going to benefit from it, you should contribute. So I contribute, and of course, whoever I work with, I hope we can all contribute, because this will benefit us. The ability to work together as a community to build businesses, to use open source Linux as an operating system, and everybody can load that up. See, the beauty of Linux is you can download it and put it on your laptop. Your laptop becomes a major workstation. The beauty of it all, and we'll go into it because it uses virtual spaces, uses containers. We'll talk about those. A lot of technical terms are really easy concepts to understand. I found from my experience that the words tend to turn people off. Like, you'll say something like quantum physics. It's a really easy field to understand. The learning curve is only a few months. The learning curve, in my opinion, because of the internet and the ability to access information anytime you want through Google. You can say, hey Google, look this up for me. Google will do it. You got a Google Assistant, right? Google will go get that information from you. You take that information and you bring it home, and then you benefit you. So this is a little bit, further ahead than I would want to be at this point. Because, like I said before, during my 40 years, about 40 years, right, of work experience, one of the things I noticed as the years piled up is that the people that actually run the business on a day-to-day basis don't benefit. And the people that benefit don't really run the business on a day-to-day. And I'm not saying that that isn't a fair exchange, but the compensation doesn't always really, it doesn't work out, in a fair way. There, it's no real balance in today's market. What I mean by that is, let me give you an example. I had a job, had a day off. I get a call. Could I come in? Someone didn't show up. Person that didn't show up, the job is sort of specialized. So there were the supervisors and managers, but wow, They didn't know how to do it. They were, of course, aware of how to function within that environment. As long as the person that really dealt with the details was there, they could run the environment. We did the detail work. So, of course, I get up, I go into work. But it just showed me, like, as I'm going in, the main part of the job hadn't really gotten going, which means that there would have been a delay. But of course, I come in and everything is fine after that. But I'm like, man, if we didn't show up right, these guys, and I'm not downing anybody because it takes special skills to be a manager or supervisor, because you have to manage personalities and you have to be aware of how people are really adjusting, or maybe say, for me, when I did get into management, I would always watch a person's attitude when they walk through the door. What type of day were they going to have from, uh, how they came in. Was their attitude up? Was their attitude down? Did they seem like they had gone through something the night before? So, I found that by talking to people and, letting them know that this ain't just about the job, that, you are important to the job too, which they were. Because if that person didn't come in, when I needed that person to come in, man, it was going to be a hard day, especially if they were vital to the job. It's going to be a hard day. So, that taught me something, the importance of, and I got to quit saying, So, that taught me the importance of respecting people. And when you're building businesses and you're building communities, the number one thing we have to do is respect. And I know I went off into this tangent, but, I like to do that. So, the thing we have to focus on is, respect. And the reason I'm bringing this up is because it looks like we're having a beef and conflict culture today, right? Instead of focusing on open source Linux, building the businesses in the community and bringing the communities back to health the way they were in my youth. And I'm not saying that was the best time, but I do remember a time when the cost of living was lower than it is today, so the standard of living was higher. Your dollar bought more, but we had a vibrant economy. You can see the economic effect when we lost the manufacturing base in my city. I see the effect of when Detroit lost its manufacturing. Chicago lost manufacturing, but Chicago also had a financial hub. Chicago, New York, I like financial hubs. Chicago mercantile market, which is they have their own form of a stock market. So Chicago had an international reputation. So Chicago, to a certain degree, wasn't hit as hard as some cities. Now Chicago did take its knocks, but when you go to Chicago today, you do see that there are some improvements going on in a lot of the community, and I must say there are improvements going on in most of the major cities, from St. Louis, Detroit, Oklahoma City, LA. And the key moving forward, especially if the economy, like I said, takes 2 years to recover, we're gonna have to start taking on more responsibility. Like, not you, and I'm not trying to tell anybody what to do. I can't give anybody advice. I haven't listened to my own advice throughout life, So, I've always been weary of trying to give people advice. I don't try to help people either, because, there's no real way to help a person unless they're willing to help themselves. I found that out. You can assist a person if that person is trying to help themselves. If I'm trying to help myself, yes, you can assist me, right? Because your assist will make it easier. And in the process of helping yourself, sometimes if you get into dig a hole for yourself and you got to work your way out, it's hard. And, you're going to shed some tears. And it's going to be some dark days. Trust me. But if you have people that are willing to assist you, if you're willing to help yourself, guarantee you, people will come and they will run to your assistance. Never fails. You got to put the first foot forward, though. Nobody's going to knock on your door and say, hey, let me help you. No, that ain't going to happen. You're going to say, hey, I need some help. And people will say, hey, how can, no. You tell people you need assistance. Then they will say, hey, how can I assist you? Because like I said before, and that's me changing my mindset of the concept of help. My concept of help before was somebody help me. My concept now is I help myself. And if everybody's helping themselves, it lighten the load, right? Now, when we're assisting each other, that's like building networks. That's like building the community back up because we're assisting each other. I'm not helping this guy over here. He doesn't need my help. He needs my assistance. He's going to do most of the work, right? That's what a man does. Man works hard. I would never ask another man to do for me what I can do for myself. I'm not going to lie to you. And they say pride, cometh before the fall. I'm gonna have to take that one because maybe I have too much pride, but I think that a man, and maybe it's because I watch those men in my community, my father, the grandfathers, those are hardworking men. We know them Papa type men, they worked them jobs, them good paying jobs, and they were labor intensive, and then that they had them hands, right? Them rough hands, because they were working with their hands, they were building. They wouldn't come home on a Saturday and sit down and watch football all day. No, they out there doing what it needed to be done to build up the community. And I'm not saying everybody was doing it, but anybody in my age group knows what I'm saying. I'm going in my 7th decade. So I'm sure everybody knows exactly what I'm talking about if you're going into your 6th or your 5th. I'm talking about people in their 50s or 60s. You know exactly what I'm talking about. And our communities are vibrant, right? So what's going on today is not the norm, right? You can go around any of these communities, any black community, and you can see the number of vacant businesses, which means that at one time those businesses were up and running, which means they were hiring people from the community, right? So we did it once, we could do it again. That's all I'm saying. It's not like we don't have a template to work for them or an ideal of how to do it. We know how to do it, right? Now, do we have the will? That's all we have to ask ourselves. Do we have the will? And before I get going too far, and I don't want to overtalk nobody, nobody's probably going to listen anyway, but you know what I'm saying? Email me, hit me up, let's talk, let's rebuild. Let me give you some of that advice that I've developed over 40 years. I can't go back and be 20 again, but I can help somebody come up. You know what I'm saying? I can pass it forward because many people that helped me in my life have assisted me. So now it's my turn. It's not about the material anymore. It's about the spiritual. Because at my age, right, I know I only have a few years left, right? So what do I do with those last years? What is my legacy going to be? So I think anybody in my age groups, I'm trying to connect with people in my age group. I'm trying to connect with people that are younger that can benefit from, this type of environment where you're in here. We're not just going to talk. We're going to walk, right? We're not just going to talk about building. We're going to actually build. I told you, I did say June 25th was when we were going to go live, which means that from this point forward, we're putting all the materials together to start really putting our projects in place. So a lot of it is the research, but this isn't just going to be a one-shot deal, right? This can be something that we can build over the next 20 years. Let's use this medium, this internet medium, in a positive way. We can go at each other if that's what we want to do, but that yields no benefits, does it? You know what I'm saying? Sometimes we have to put our pride aside and, learn that everybody can be a leader, but at the same time, we can be a follower. I want everybody to have a good day. Peace.